Less is More, Part 2 of 3. The content for this podcast comes from my book, Advanced Success Secrets. You get a free copy of each of my 8 best-selling books at alexhammerbooks.com. That's Alex, that's AlexHammerbooks.com. Less is More, Part 2 of 3. One of the basic rules actors learn is, quote, leave them wanting more, end of quote. End your performance while the audience is still enraptured. There is still a bit of mystery, and they are clamoring for more. Don't wear out your welcome by becoming too familiar and too obvious. Successful couples realize this by giving each other space, some separation, and developing their own separate, parentheses, which is different than hidden, end of parentheses, abilities and lives so that they can come together and remains constantly fresh, and there's always something new to share. If your partner is always growing, always learning, then it is exciting because you're always stimulated by the person in a new way. By contrast, if the person isn't growing, isn't developing, it is the same old story. Parentheses, same old sad story, you might say, over and over again. You start to feel as if you're living in a story of a broken record, a rut, the same thing over and over again. This is when relationships start to go stale. Now, of course, couples differ in the degree of growth, separation, and distance, which is optimal and comfortable for their relationship. For some, it may be a boys or girls' night out at a certain interval, and for some couples, even some who are married, it is living on different coasts. We all have different intimacy needs, and a cornerstone relationship compatibility is when these intimacy needs match up. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. When relatively mature people come together, they have resolved a lot of the basic intimacy issues, and thus there is a greater probability that the intimacy issues that arise in the relationship will be able to be successfully navigated by the couple. By contrast, those with greater unresolved intimacy issues may draw a partner to themselves, often subconsciously or unconsciously, who will trigger these unresolved issues in an attempt to learn how to better face and resolve them. This is when we start talking about, quote, father figures, or, quote, mother figures, or reliving the past through another person. This is why dynamic-oriented schools of psychology, quote, parentheses, only one branch of many, end of parentheses, trace issues in current relationships back to childhood and family issues, etc. In this view, we develop behavioral styles or personalities, if you will, based upon early experiences which shape our later reactions. So, we become defensive, parentheses, or, quote, histrionic, withdrawn, or, parentheses, quote, passive-aggressive, or angry, parentheses, quote, borderline, to name but a few. The world is made of energy, and from this develop the pushes and pulls of relationships. We feel drawn to somebody, to someone, or repelled, or both. It's difficult enough when we feel both at differing times. When we feel both at the same time, that is a real quandary. Parentheses, in psychology, they call that an approach avoidance dilemma, or in layman's terms, quote, damned if you do and damned if you don't, end of quote. It's also referred to as a double bind, or again in layman's terms, you're screwed. Quote, you're screwed. You get the general idea.